I like to remind those. All right. So I'm Michaela Freiberger, as Charlie introduced me as. I am the coordinator here at the Dubuque County Energy District. And with regrets, my counterpart in Clayton County is unable to join us just due to some health conversations that she had today. So I'm going to be running this conversation and really mentioning all of the other partners throughout the state of Iowa on my call as well. Just so you know, if there is feedback, the best way for us to avoid that is just to make sure we're on mute. And on the very bottom corner, there's a little microphone that just mutes you. So again, if we get feedback, that's just the best way to keep our tasks going. When I'm sharing my screen, if you have any questions, there's a little chat function. It looks like a little chat box and it says chat below it. Just go ahead and click on that. I'll be monitoring the chat. If you have questions, I will answer them as we go along. Otherwise, you can go ahead and unmute yourself and just go ahead and start asking them. I'll stop where I'm at. Or finally, we can wait until the very end and I will answer the questions at the end. If you're like me, I like to take notes along the way so I can remember where I've covered and where I'm going. So without further ado, I'm going to share my screen here. All right. So I'm going to hit the present mode here. And can everyone see my screen okay? Just by thumbs up or thumbs down? All right, it looks so far so good. All right. So if you see my little cursor going around, that's just because I'm moving some people out of the way here and moving it so I can have some conversations. So as Charlie mentioned, my name is Michaela Freiberger, and I am today talking about the Clean Energy Districts of Iowa. And so our acronym is CEDI. So if I say CEDI, that means the Clean Energy Districts of Iowa. So briefly, I'm going to talk a little bit about the energy district movement and how this all got started in Winneshiek, what it looks like when an energy district is in action, what kind of partnerships we typically build within communities, and talking a little bit further, I always like to have action, not just conversation. So talking about how you can become involved and how an individual energy district itself can make an impact. So overall, our energy districts are all fairly similar in our vision and our mission. Some language might be slightly different, but overall, we look to build our communities with those who are the boots on the ground doers. And we look to build 100% sustainable, efficient, or renewable energy by 2050. And this is not only through focusing on one aspect or another, so not just solar installs, but we're also looking at the economic impact and building this for generations to come. I have a 6-year-old, so it's not just about me, it's about her future as well. And we do this through multiple different avenues, and this is through education, market transformation, investment. We are advocating a lot right now, working on doing energy planning and energy audits, and then really focusing on building our partnerships right now, specifically in Dubuque County. And then we also, as a CEDI, look to build our networks and partnerships within our own individual counties that we serve, but also at the state level. So all of us do serve as a seat at the state table for those who are pushing towards energy transition and a clean energy transition. And so we all look to continue not only our local efforts, but also at the state level to make this 100% transition by 2050 come true. So in 2015, Winneshiek County, Andy Johnson really honed in on why should we, do these energy districts? Why is it important that we have these energy districts in our communities? And so with the thought process of why that build our foundation as energy districts. So we all are not-for-profit organizations. All of us function a little differently. Some are independent, some function kind of within the city and county in partnerships, but all on our own, serving as a nonprofit organization. So we really look to promote stewardship. And so it's not just our time, talent, and treasure that we're putting towards the table, but also how can we best serve our community by utilizing our resources that we have. And then again, talking about a total market transformation and focusing on building our energy grid towards sustainable measures. And our local energy district movement really tries for this universal approach. As I was talking about, it's not just focusing on one aspect like solar panels being put on people's homes, but also this is focusing on how can we build our job market? How can we, in the meantime, help to reduce energy burdens? And an energy burden is how much of one's income, so it's typically a percentage, is being put towards utilities. How can we reduce our emissions through other measures in our homes, whether it be geothermal or utilizing wind energy? How can we advocate for grids that are more sustainable? As our neighbors in Cedar Rapids had the derecho hit their homes, we look to build communities and really look at how communities can build their own energy grids and municipal utilities. And then again, we really want to focus on that being sustainable energy and renewable energy versus the big coal plants coming in and taking over. And also, this is something that we really look to have boots on the ground, community organizers, someone like Charlie Winterwood, working together to build our energy districts. Why? We know that when we have those who are most invested in building community resiliency on the ground, finding out exactly what the needs are within our community, that's when we build our strongest and most resilient communities. And so it's not just us on our own. I had conversations with our other energy districts about our presentation tonight and talking about how we find value in walking in the door together to present what we're doing. While each of our energy districts have different focuses, we all want to work together to build a more sustainable community around energy. And so, as I mentioned, this idea was from 2010 in Winneshiek Energy Districts. And this was kind of formed with Andy Johnson at the helm of it all. Andy, his father is Paul Johnson, who recently has passed away, who led a lot of conversations at our state level and at the USDA. And Andy grew up watching the Soil and Water District, the Soil and Water Conservation Districts. I should know that. My dad is a district commissioner. Protect their natural resources by utilizing what's currently, known as the Great Depression and the Dust Bowl. Really build a conversation together about how to reduce the likelihood of that happening again throughout, whether it be the West or us here in the Midwest. And so he really honed in on the boots on the ground conversations that took place to build these soil and water conservation districts, how it took partnerships to come together with state and local entities to combat soil erosion. And so this idea was, formed that we need to create energy districts in the same sort of fashion. We need to address local energy challenges and additionally moving into energy efficiency conversations. So not just focusing on putting everybody on solar panels, wind, water, or geothermal or nuclear, but also how can we reduce our energy consumption? As we know, it's going to take time to bring 100% to its truest number. And so how can we help to reduce our impact along the way? And so the energy district movement was again built to be resilient and to be something that will outlast my lifetime and my daughter's lifetime as the soil and water district. The soil and water conservation districts were also formed. So we really wanted this to focus on our rural communities just as equally as our urban areas and our urban centers. We're fortunate here in Dubuque that we have a person who is hired to focus on sustainability efforts, and we greatly partner with Gina Bell at the City of Dubuque to continue to move forward on those efforts. And she's one person working in our city. And so how can we leverage what she's doing out into the county? How can we partner together to build on efforts in our community? And so that's how we really, truly look to bring everyone, not just A, those who can afford to, or B, those within city limits who traditionally are those who are reached. And so moving forward, talking about our rural communities, how that impacts our environment. So things like corn splat are real for many farmers in our ag community, celebrating today National Agriculture Day. How can we reduce our output of greenhouse gas emissions through our energy consumption? I do see in the chat box that there was a question about nuclear energy, and that's to be part of future energy. At this time in Iowa, it's still a discussion. It has gone not as far as it has in other states, but yes, there are many components of nuclear energy that are being explored as considered as a renewable energy source. And so the scale of what the nuclear energy needs to be may not be what is needed through an investor-owned utility as well. So I like to insert jokes just because through Zoom, it's really hard to note who's engaged and who's not engaged. And so there's this nice little, what do wind turbines talk about? Nothing. They just shoot the breeze. So as Charlie was mentioning, just giving you a visual of where all of the energy districts are located. You'll see here that the majority of them are up here in Iowa in the northeast corner. We soon, along with Polk County, will have Warren County in. Howard's up here. We will have Warren County in so we will have 10 energy districts then. There are some conversations taking place in other out kind of, right next to our energy districts to bring like Jones County in. And we just need to, again, build our energy districts with boots on the ground initiatives, not necessarily coming in and implementing a governmental organization or a body that is not managed within its own county. So we're always looking for local advocates within each of those counties to really move forward the efforts of expanding the energy district reach. So far as that we are having conversations, we are having conversations in Illinois, Wisconsin, and Michigan. So just across the border of Clayton County here, right up here, there is some conversations taking place in Wisconsin. Additionally, just on the other side here of Jackson County in Illinois, there are some conversations, and there's just some pockets in Michigan who are interested in adopting the energy district model. So we have been talking a lot at the study level, so the Clean Energy Districts of Iowa level, what it looks like for us to go national or regional outside of Iowa. Super excited about that. So again, I mentioned that we really rely on partnerships to build our clean energy districts. And I'll talk a little bit about what it means for us to be a quote unquote one-stop shop later. But we really look to be that conduit to connect partners together. And I'll talk about some specific examples that we are doing here in Dubuque County and what it looks like when an energy district is in action. But we really look to partner each of our counties that have our Green Iowa AmeriCorps team. We really look to partner with those teams so we can have additional people helping us do work, because most of us are individuals doing this work or two of us doing this work. And so having that additional Green Iowa AmeriCorps team members to help, whether it's put toolkits together or put flyers on people's door about what we're doing, is really important. We work a lot with community action organizations. Most recently up north, they've been talking about electric vehicles, and they did a huge electric vehicle study with their local community action organization. Again, partnering with the Sierra clubs in our areas, working with Interfaith Power and Lights organizations. I work kind of directly through our community foundation here, but our community foundation has a larger reach than just here in Dubuque. Working directly and not just through some conduit to get to the at-risk and low-income community. And then we also work with the resource groups as well. Food distributors and farmers markets, climate action groups, schools and institutions, religious organizations, local, state, federal government, Iowa Environmental Council, the Center for Rural Affairs. The list can just go on and on about all of our partners that we work together with at the study level. One really cool thing before I move too far is for the religious organizations and to our partners just north of us and Clayton County, they actually hired an intern this last summer before COVID hit, so 2019, to do what's called a cool congregations designation. So they worked with the religious organizations throughout the county to reduce their lighting impact. And so they converted them to LED bulbs. And then they got a really cool designation placard saying that they're a cool congregation. And just simple things like that can make a really cool impact in our communities, but also to help further our mission. So does anyone else have any questions that I might be able to answer before I really dive deeper into what energy districts look like when they're in action?
This is Charlie. I just like to point out Interfaith Power and Light does cool congregations in Dubuque also.
Oh, awesome. Yes. I know that someone had told me that. Okay. So what it looks like when an energy district is in action, and each of us have very similar 5-step actions of what we do. We don't want to be everything to everyone, and each of us spends our priority and our time a little bit differently on each of these 5 components. So we really look to be an educator about the importance of local and clean, sustainable energy, especially local energy. As I mentioned before, we want to be that one-stop shop or that clearinghouse for the local sustainable connections and resources. So an example of what that looks like is we just had our board meeting tonight, and we have a solar installer on our board who has panels that are 7 years old. And there was a business who had damage because of the derecho. And so those 7-year-old panels are just going to go and sit at his place of business, or they're just going to go sit in a landfill. And instead of that taking place, because the business is going to spend the same amount getting new solar panels, those old solar panels are going to be put into some conversations with some low-income project installers whether it be for housing or it be for a nonprofit organization. And we're going to figure out how we can connect the dots so not-for-profits and low-income residents in our community can have solar versus having to pay outright for the solar panels, the battery, and the install, and the service connections, all of that. They'll just be paying for part of that process. So that's just kind of one example of what it looks like when an energy district is in action, of what a one-stop shop can look like. We also work with the small business and nonprofits to improve their access. So an example is we are connected to energy auditors who will come in and complete a rural assessment of their energy practices and give them best practices to change their energy output and their energy usage. And so that's called a REAP, so Rural Energy Audit process and a program. And with that, the farms that are underneath of that, working as a small business, can now expand into putting a, they want to put their own on-site little general store on their property, but they needed to get their energy usage under control. And so things like that funnel through our organization, additionally working with other nonprofits to help leverage that opportunity. We work again with farms and rural residents. We don't just focus on the city of Dubuque and the initiatives taking place there. This is a whole Dubuque County that we look to reach. And then last but definitely not least, we really want to find a path to connect all of our weatherization and energy audits and energy efficiency programs within our community to help those who, again, are traditionally left behind, are those with the highest percentage of energy burdens. And so those are considered our at-risk and low-income residents. And so traditionally, again, they're left behind or they're very difficult to reach, whether they be residents within the city of Dubuque or the rural residents who their one source of news is the rural farming channel. We really want to provide opportunities to reduce energy expenses for all. So again, when we're in action, we like to have jokes. So here we found a solar bear. So I stepped into my role in September of 2020. And since then, you know, in 2020, September through December, we continued our place at the state table. We recruited 3 REAP energy audit projects, and we continued to engage the community. So what it means when we continued our place at the state table is that we continue to watch and advocate for different pieces of legislation with our either local legislators or state legislators. So we hosted what was known as an energy crawl, and we worked to do that hybrid this year. Hopefully we're able to go back in person for 2021's energy crawl and take video to share with everyone. But we advocated for the Senate File 2311's removal from being in a piece of legislation, as it's continuing to cause a lot of issues for our friends and partners at places like HACAP, which is the Hawkeye Area Community Action Program. And they do things like the weatherizations. And so hearing stories of how 60% of their applicants that they traditionally were able to reach in 2018, they no longer can reach because of budgeting cuts. That was a really impactful story to tell. Additionally, we, like the home that's pictured on this slide, were able to talk about how important their program is to continue to fund. We additionally talked about the importance of small businesses and continuing to leverage solar tax credits for our small businesses within the state as well. Recruiting 3 energy audit projects. That was something that was started prior to my stepping into the role. but we worked with 2 small businesses and a farmer to continue to help them understand what their energy consumption is and how they can reduce that. The farmer is able to leverage the REAP grant up against other types of funding that can help build other components on their farm to engage a different type of community as well. And then finally, we engaged the community. So our picture down here is that we hosted a Drive Electric Week event. It was kind of on the spot of rainy. We were hoping it wasn't going to rain, and it didn't, but it looked like it was going to. So we had 5 different electric vehicles. We had a Tesla that was on site where the guy pulled out his phone and he was standing talking to us, and he was driving his Tesla around the parking lot. So we got some video footage of that. That was a cool experience. And then we also had some information from our friends in Galena who are also working to do the same sorts of conversations and building conversations about the importance of our electric vehicle transition. So this is just basically a nice little pie chart to talk about what we really want to focus on in 2021 and what my role is really going to be focusing on. And so you'll see at the top, split at, at 30% and 30%. We really want to be able to reach our farmers and our rural residents. And so initiatives and programming will be starting to take place over the summer, just so we can be outdoors, be meeting with the farmers in their fields and the rural residents in parks and other city amenities as well. And so conversations talking about what the Energy District does is really important, but also what other community partners are doing and how we can connect everyone together. And then additionally, we are focusing on energy audits and weatherization. So how can we improve access and coordination amongst all of our partners and ourselves as it relates to energy efficiency? We're focusing on, again, community education, which can be transferred into any of these, and working with small businesses and not-for-profits. And finally, my least of my time is going to be spent on building that quote unquote one-stop shop, because everything else will fall underneath the other categories. So some things that we've started to do in 2021, and this one started last week on Friday, was we have built renter energy efficiency conversations to take place over 5 different sessions. And these conversations are meeting with those who traditionally have the highest energy burdens. And so our first event, we had someone who was on site to translate for Marshallese. And our second event, we will also have a translator for Spanish. In our energy conversations, we walk through a free toolkit that we give each of our participants. The toolkits are valued at over $40. And what they get are things like faucet aerators to help reduce the output of their water from either their shower or their kitchen or their bathroom sink. We also give insulation as it relates to foam or caulking that can go around windows and doors. So we teach those who participate how to utilize that. We have outlet covers that go on exterior walls, so walls that touch the outside, because often there's no insulation behind the outlets. They're often leaking air. We have some other toolkit, little inserts in there like window sealants and some popcorn and some locally sourced granola as well, just to keep everyone kind of happy with it. They got a little food in their tummies at the end of it all. And so that conversation, we look to distribute 200 kits throughout our city of Dubuque. And we look to build that program and expand it into the county as well. These kits, we've kind of calculated, will approximately save over the course of the year if implemented properly. into residences and renters units that need it around $250. And so we really look to save people money so they can spend it elsewhere. Additionally, we are hinting at, what is the temperature you're keeping your home at? Things that people can control. And it's okay if you wear an extra sweatshirt, not your swimsuit in the middle of winter when it's -5 out. And so those conversations also are helping to educate our community. Now, as this whole process is really great, we on the back end of things are looking to collect data from our renters so we can calculate energy burdens, we can calculate efficiency of units. And then what we also are doing is sharing this data and this information with our friends at the City of Dubuque and the Housing Department so they can calculate unit and landlord scores as well. As part of this whole process, we include a landlord in each conversation so they can share the importance of having dialogue with their landlord about their units and making their units more efficient as well, and how to have those conversations. So that's one thing. Additionally, we've established our quarterly energy breakfast. So our next one will take place on April 17th. That will feature local businesses and energy, and talking about a variety of different topics as it relates to how local energy has impacted their lives, whether it's energy efficiency or solar panels. And we also are working to bring in, and we've got Iowa Businesses for Clean Energy coming to present at that event. In July, we're going to be talking about solar, but it's not going to be your typical type of solar conversation. So things you may not know about solar, like if you have a separate solar install, that's on the ground, what types of habitats can you build underneath of your solar install to make it more impactful? Can you put a pollinator habitat there, perhaps? And then other types of information about solar that's a little bit more of a deep dive versus just the general information. We are working with HACAP, again, that's Hawkeye Area Agency. I'm sorry. So we're working with HACAP and Green Iowa AmeriCorps to streamline our weatherization projects in Dubuque County. We are working to collect videos and stories that are written about how being a ratepayer has impacted our friends and neighbors' homes. And moving on, we've completed our holiday wrapping paper initiative, switching to cloth versus wrapping paper. So cloth is more sustainable because you can reuse it continuously. Yes, it takes a little bit more to generate on the front side of things, but overall, cloth has many other purposes other than just a one-time use. And it does not go to sit in the landfill like wrapping paper may. Again, we've worked with our local food distributors, as I mentioned before, but this one was more specifically on an LED bulb swap and distribution. So we distributed so far throughout our county since January over 400 LED bulbs. And we distributed this last Saturday at Farmers Market 30 light bulbs. We engaged a variety of different community members, from families to those who are elderly and who are at home alone. So overall, a working energy district always will look to build our foundational programming. We all look to generate a plan together. We're trying to get some grant funding to move forward on bringing partners together and convening best practices about an electric vehicles transition and what that looks like for the Heartland to have a total market transition to electric vehicles now versus 10 years behind what our usual trends are. Additionally, we look to all build rural access. And so we are one of the less rural communities. We're more of an urban community. But working with our other partners to connect to our rural residents in a different way, and then also leveraging partnerships. All of us do that every single day to educate our community. I see in the questions, what's an LED swap? So what that means is they bring incandescent light bulbs or the CFLs to the market because those can't be put into the garbage, and those have to be made by a special appointment to be properly disposed of at our solid waste management. And so they bring their light bulbs and we give them the LED bulbs. So that's what a swap is. We swap their light bulbs so they don't have to take them to the landfill. Again, I like jokes. I got jokes for days. Something is different about you. I got a perm. Do you like it? Okay. So just quickly, again, I'm more about action than I am about just assimilation of information, especially via Zoom. So again, we have our Eggs for Energy breakfast. You can support a local farmer by buying eggs. Make those eggs and join us on our Zoom call on a Saturday morning. And again, we're talking about small businesses and energy. So we have a couple solar small businesses that will talk about solar. One is Envision, the other is Textile Brewing Company. We also are working with the Convivium to come and present about their energy efficiency measures that they have taken in what was formerly a greenhouse. And we have Iowa small businesses for clean energy as well, joining us talking about how can we become involved at the state level. Always, we are looking for those who are willing to give time, talent, and treasure to our organization to continue to move our efforts forward and to continue to build all of our programming. I mentioned and talked a lot about our renter energy efficiency. I talked a little bit about our story collecting. We started this opportunity in the fall, and Lila, who is pictured here, with her granddaughter, her great-granddaughter, and her son, was able to stay in her home. And she was really scared that if she wasn't able to stay in her home, especially since COVID hit, that she would no longer be with us. She's 98. Again, all of us are working together for an electric vehicle market transformation. And here is my contact information. I know I am 1 minute shy of 40 minutes, but that's quite all right. So does anyone have any questions for me? I know I tried to not breeze through, but I breezed through a lot of that content.
Don't forget to unmute yourself.
I guess my question would be, looking long term, do we have, are you working on a plan to be, say, 50% sustainable energy by 2030 and 100% by 2050, or is that something that's outside of what you're looking at?
So each of our communities have our own plans as it relates to the 50% markers along the way. And so we here in Dubuque have a plan that the city of Dubuque has put forth for climate action, and it specifically addresses the energy side of things. And so I believe it's by 2035, and that's just for city owned buildings and buses and other things that the city is involved with to get to the 50%. So we all as energy districts are trying to aim for that goal of 100% together, understanding each of our communities is going to progressively get there. As I mentioned before, my focus this year is really reducing energy consumption. And so we want to be able to reduce that energy consumption, because studies show that it reduces, I think it's 35% more greenhouse gases than if I were to put a solar panel on my own home. So if I'm using best practices and reducing my energy consumption, I may not need as large of a solar install 5 years down the road when it comes time for me to switch to the clean energy. And so really it's starting to, focus on how we each individually work, whether it's as a city or a county, and how each of us have all a little bit different of a focus on getting to that end goal.
It's a lot
That's a good
cheaper to
question.
be energy efficiency than it is to put up a solar panel or,
Do they still run the pedal project in Dubuque, or is that a city project where they come in and do like an energy audit in businesses and then set up a plan to reduce? Is that part of the energy district, or is that something that Dubuque City did on their own?
they Dubuque did it on their own. I think it was the sustainability coordinators that have coordinated that. And I don't know if they're still doing that or not. Do you know, Michaela?
That project was grant funded. And so if they receive additional grant funding or demand for it, they can go out and seek funding to provide those. Our goal really is to try to leverage things like what Gina's doing, or previously that role had been doing as a sustainability coordinator, and see what that impact was. I don't believe there were very many small businesses that took advantage of it. Because they have to be literally, you have to walk in their door and help them go through the entire process as well. It's not just a, splur out there that usually gets a lot of interest for small businesses, unfortunately.
I know we did it in our company, but it's kind of, you haven't heard anything about it in the last couple of years. So,
right. Yeah. And for us, we really tried to focus on the rural communities, whether it was a small business, nonprofit, or a farmer, to get those REAP grant energy audits coming to our community. So that was kind of an initiative to step out and work in the rural community outside of the city. For those of you who are following the chat, just so you know, I did put my email address in there. Additionally, there was some conversations about the Central Coast community. So that's really focusing on, it looks like, consumer or municipal utilities. Am I correct, Gerald? So yeah, it seems similar to.
Yes, I'm sorry, it took me a moment to unmute.
That's okay.
Yeah, it's established by the boards of supervisors of 3 or 4 contiguous counties.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's also taking place in Mississippi. So it's kind of like a co-op. And so the way that those function in Iowa is a little bit differently, because we have a couple large investor-owned utilities. And so things like Maquoketa Valley, those can, that electric co-op is similar to that. They're really working to switch and transition into locally owned, consumer generated solar, whether it's on people's property. And so whatever you overproduce gets passed on to the next person. Or it is, everyone together kind of gets solar or wind generation and large. So they're trying to transition to that. However, the larger investor-owned utilities in Iowa, like Alliant, have gone into towns and cities like Dubuque. And so Dubuque proper has signed a contract for the next 20 or 30 years with Alliant, 5 years before they were supposed to, the year before Gina came, so that Alliant was our provider here in our community. So we have to wait until that contract either expires, becomes null and void, or it transitions out of it, just from the Iowa Utilities Board's perspective, for something like that to take place in the city proper of Dubuque. However, in Dubuque County, most of the generation comes from a co-op.
Winneshiek County came within 6 votes of having a municipal utility, but the Alliance spent lots of money fighting that back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Cascade has a municipal utility for their city as well. Now, it's not clean generation. It is powered by things that we don't like to talk about on calls like this. But I have talked with their municipal director about what it would look like to transition and to get on clean and renewable energy lines. And so it would take investment upon the city, and they would have to vote to do that. But places, so it's really cool. If you watch Paris to Pittsburgh, there are communities in Puerto Rico who have community generated solar. And so when they have large weather devastations hit their communities, just like, you know, here in Iowa, we had the derecho. They all had solar panels on their homes generating electricity. And so since they had overproduction and a battery system built in with their production, they were able to get back up on electricity in the matter of hours. Same thing here, where there's a community in Iowa that's community generated solar, and they were able to get back up in hours, not days. And so when it's days, it becomes a public health crisis. And that's why it's really important that we hone in on generating our energy local. Yes, it's great to tell people that we're reducing our greenhouse gas emissions, we're clean, efficient, you don't smell the coal plants, and you're not seeing all this gas being burned into the air. And it's really truly about how, when the systems are built properly, how people can get electricity back up and started within hours, not days. And it creates jobs, lots of jobs. Does anyone else have any questions? That was a great one. It's a good leader.
Well, thank you, Michaela, for doing the program tonight. We're going to stay on a little bit to discuss what we want to do for the April meeting.
Thank you all very much for having me. I truly appreciate it. And I know Jolene, if she were here, would be thanking you as well for the time to present. And Andy also in Winneshiek sends his thanks for this opportunity to present to you all.
Thanks, Michaela. It was a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ben mentioned